Hello, friends. Welcome to Linden-Linthicum United Methodist Church. I'm Gayle and I'd like to talk with you today about the Serenity Prayer. For the last year, we've been including the Serenity Prayer in all of the written devotionals that we've sent to you, believing that that was just a really important prayer for the time, for COVID time. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Now, that's a great prayer for any time, but that was particularly helpful. We thought that it would be during COVID, during that era. We're still in that era, but we're a year out, and so we're thinking that we really want to transition to another prayer. Not that that isn't a great prayer that you can always use, but that you would still remember that prayer. That prayer was written by Reinhold Niebuhr. Reinhold Niebuhr was a theologian and seminary professor and preacher and teacher. He was an ordained minister of the church. He worked primarily in the first half of the 20th century. He retired in 1960 from his teaching duties, and he was actually awarded a Presidential Medal of Freedom. He was a public theologian that had, it was said, more influence than any other theologian on the life of the country, really, in the way that he talked particularly about ethics. Really an important topic, right? And so he wrote this prayer, too, which was adopted by Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's how it became so well known, because it's used in every 12-step meeting ever. The original language was a little bit different than we know it. When he first wrote it, it said this: "Father, give us courage to change what must be altered, serenity to accept what cannot be helped, and the insight to know the one from the other." So that's how it was originally presented. But it then changed to that language which we know and is so familiar to us. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Such an important prayer. Sometimes we spend an awful lot of time trying to change things that we can't change. And sometimes we don't have the courage or the boldness to do something about that which we really can have an effect on. And what's often missing is the wisdom to know which is the one and which is the other. That's all true. It's still an appropriate prayer. It's true if you are an alcoholic. It's true if you have some other kind of addiction. It's true if you're anybody at all trying to live the best life that you can in the world with the gifts that God has given you, the life that God has given you. It's also true, though, that Reinhold Niebuhr did not stop with that prayer. We usually hear just the beginning, but he goes on. And he says, after the part that we know, he says, living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as the pathway to peace, taking, as he did, meaning Jesus, this sinful world as it is, not that I would have it, trusting that he will make all things right if I surrender to his will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him forever in the next. Amen. Now that's the whole prayer. It's a wonderful prayer, isn't it? I invite you can Google it and get the whole Serenity Prayer, and I invite you to take a look at that, if you will, but it talks about living each day, one day at a time, one moment at a time, understanding that your hardships are a path, part of your path, and taking, like Jesus did, this world, this sinful world as it is, not as we wish it would be, living in the reality that we live in, trusting that Jesus will make all things right if we surrender to his will. So I offer this prayer to you one more time. Like I said, we're going to be transitioning in what we send out to you to a different prayer, and you'll see what that is on our next video devotion. But I invite you to join me this one last time with that opening part of the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen and amen.